What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now Back to the Past. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to talk about Final Fantasy VII Remake. We are actually slightly less than a month away from Rebirth, and I thought, what a great time. Go back, play, and this time, I guess, playing the PS5 version of Final Fantasy VII Remake, and we're actually going to do a video maybe next week and a half. In the next little while, we'll talk about the Yuffie DLC, or Intergrade, as it is called. But man, oh man, I got a lot of stuff to talk about, and I want to start off just by saying I'm in. I am all in on Final Fantasy VII, and I'm in more on this game than I was back when it first came out, and I mean Remake. I'm way more into it now, even though I really liked it. I had a blast playing it. I played it day one. This game came out 2020. You know, the world was truly, literally falling apart, and we were on the move, actually. I think we moved right after this game came out. I played the beginning of this game in Las Vegas, and I played the end of this game in Colorado, and just really enjoyed it from beginning to end. But, you know, I've never played the original Final Fantasy VII. Now, I am going to fix that. I actually have physically, and also it is on PlayStation Plus, but I wanted it, you know, a channel about preservation. I wanted to get it physically. I have it physically, the original Final Fantasy VII. So I'm going to play that later on in the year. But I want to talk about, you know, at least part in this video. This game got me going. This game got me to say, you know, I knew the big thing that happens in Final Fantasy VII, and I guess we don't have to say it, you know, if we don't want to, but I always knew it, okay? I'd watched videos decades ago at this point, maybe, where I would see the clip or people would just talk about it, just, you know, as if it was nothing because the game is so old. But I didn't know really the rest of the game. Now, I beat 7 Remake again, you know, for the second time, and then I went into the rabbit hole. I went down deep. I looked at story explain videos. I started reading from the Wikipedia-like things, you know, the fan-ran pages, you know, for Final Fantasy VII. I am so in on the lore, and I don't know why it took me so long. You know, the story, the kind of convolutedness, but also the beauty of it, and just like the charm that the overall story has, from Sephiroth to, you know, any of them, really reminds me of games that I already really like Alan Wake has, you know, convoluted, messed up story, but I love that stuff. I love stories that are just kind of weird. And I think Final Fantasy VII Remake and the original game, I think their games, or I think their stories are just weird. Well, maybe the game itself, but I think the stories are weird. Kingdom Hearts, you know, is a game I classically always talk about, that I like that game because of how difficult it is to hang with it, how difficult it is to understand it. And I mean, I think they got a lot of that inspiration probably from that mid area or mid region of Final Fantasy games, 7, 8, 9, you know, in that area. And then Kingdom Hearts 1, you know, comes out after that. Maybe that's where they got it from. So a couple things, you know, to talk about. Well, number one, actually, let me just say this. We're closing in on 1,000 subscribers. I'm trying to push this just in the videos until we get there. If you have not yet subscribed, you know, obviously leaving a like on this video helps, but hit the subscribe button, send it out to people. We're trying to get to 1,000, and we're really close, and I really appreciate all the support. You guys, you know, if you've been with me for a while, you know how much I love this channel. This is always a blast. So what I want to do is, you know, we already kind of touched upon my history of this game, but let's do just a little bit deeper. So when the game came out, you know, I said, you know, started in Vegas, moved to Colorado, finished it. Well, I had it physically. And I think 2020, for whatever reason, was a year that I don't know what came over me, but maybe we were strapped for cash. I don't know. And I gave a lot of games away. I actually did. I think I did like the trade-in on Amazon. I remember trading in Outer Worlds. That was a big one I can remember doing. And I didn't remember it until actually somewhat recently. I also traded in Final Fantasy VII. So I got this game disc. I had it physically, and, you know, I gave it away. Why? I don't know. But at this point in my life, you know, I want these things back. So I have the original Final Fantasy VII. We'll look at that and talk about it when I play it later this year. And we're going to do that on the channel and just me personally. But I came into the opportunity, and I got it back. I didn't like take it back. I had to buy it again. So that's my mistake. You know, it's secondhand. I should have maybe gotten it on Amazon, like an actual edition, because like this is kind of like stuck there. Also, this is kind of like stuck there. There's really nothing I can do about it. I tried my best. I know there's tricks to remove these things, but it's not on like this part. It's on the actual like paper, like the cover. Not ideal. Definitely not ideal, but man, I love it. I mean, It's got the whole thing, 2 discs. I mean, beautiful. And I think they talked to the director of Rebirth saying, like, was 2 discs intentional? Did you do that on purpose, or did you actually need to? I think the answer was a little bit of both, that it's supposed to be nostalgic that it's on 2 discs, and kind of out of necessity they needed to split the thing up. So let's, we spent enough time talking about the history and, my knowledge. Let's talk about the game itself. This game rocks. This game, I actually think it's better now than it was in 2020. There are some things that stick out, in terms of negatives. There's always going to be kind of cliches with games like this, and I guess you can put that in the negative. I guess the one negative, let's just talk about the one negative, kind of get it out of the way, the side quests. The side quests in this game are not good, I think, almost like whatsoever. There's a couple that are better than others, and again, actually, when I'm recording this, I'm playing Yuffie's, the Intergrade DLC. Fort Condor, the game inside the game, that game is a masterpiece. And that game actually stands out, where this game, again, it's a lot of side stuff. It's you can do like the battles in the virtual reality. That's kind of cool. But the general side missions of, hey, there's monsters in the junkyard, go check it out. And then, you kill them, you come back, or you can fast travel back. There's not too many of them. Like, I will say that this is not the longest game of all time, and I assume compared to Rebirth, it's not the longest game. But even with it being not all that massive, and definitely even the map, right? Like, you're constricting it to just like one region, because that's, you're following the game. But I don't know, like, there's not a lot of side missions, but when there are side missions, it's really not all that engaging. Now, the thing is, it is probably best of you to do side missions, whether you're kind of grinding levels, or maybe you find something there, in chests, or maybe it's a reward that you get, right? There is a reason to do it, but the reason, I would say, is not the enjoyment of the conversation you're having or the activity that you're actually doing. I mean, the combat's fun, so anytime you're doing combat, you are going to enjoy yourself, and you're going to face different enemies and stuff, but the reason you do them is not necessarily fun. To be honest with you, that is the only negative I really have. This game looks beautiful. This game sounds beautiful, whether it's the actors, who crush it. In my now deep dive, down the rabbit hole of Final Fantasy VII, I know there's like a divide on the internet about the voice actors, right? Because they recast everybody, the English side. And like, I watched the first about 20 minutes of Advent Children. I know Advent Children has kind of been wiped out by the new, timeline that they're doing. But again, when I say I want to go all in, and I have been doing it, Advent Children counts. But, what you get from watching Advent Children is the voice actors. And I grew up on Kingdom Hearts, I mentioned that earlier, and my introduction, I forgot to say this, my introduction to Cloud and Tifa and Yuffie and all, it was through Kingdom Hearts. So not just their look and that style, but also how they sounded. So, that's how I grew up on it. But it's not so engraved in my mind that I was like unwilling to accept change. I think they crushed it. Cloud is a really interesting character, and I think his voice actor does a really good job. The girls, like, they were just really, really good. And I mean, like, I know Tifa specifically, I feel Tifa is kind of iconic. The past like 20 years of Tifa. I get it. I understand their reason. I mean, they have explained it. They've tried to explain it, and I buy it, and I like them. I mean, I think they do a really good job. I'd say, like, Barrett specifically, he really, I think, tries to just kind of impersonate what he sounded like, and that's just, like, my takeaway. I think he sounds great. He sounds more like he's, trying to impersonate himself versus everybody else, I think, kind of doing their own thing generally. I mean, there's still some, like, spunk and similarities with Tifa or even, like, Aerith, right? Like, there's kind of a thing you follow, a guidelines that you go over. But I think they do a really good job. So when it comes to voice acting, so good. The music, like, I mean, it's just fantastic. And the visuals, I mean, yeah, I played the PS5, remastered version, but game came out, back in 2020, and it looks so good. I mean, this is a very impressive looking game all the time. I mean, when you're around and you're doing the side quests, and it's not going to look as good as, there's a couple CG moments, and not that many. There's maybe only like 4 or 5 where the game looks absolutely unreal. It looks like you're watching a literal movie. There's that. Then there's the general cutscenes, which there's a lot of them, and they look really good. And then there's the more kind of back and forth, the text is going on, at the bottom, and you can kind of cycle through. all of them look good. They kind of, they get better each one. I think that's like a Japanese thing because you see that quite often in these kind of games. Even like a Kingdom Hearts has stuff like this. So Yakuza is a really good example. Yakuza has like 4 different cutscene styles, and each one kind of progressively gets better looking, right? Maybe it's just like a thing with them, but the game is so much fun to play. That's another thing. We'll get into the story and the characters specifically, but I mentioned with side quests even, it's just fun. Like, it's just fun to play the game, cast spells, use your abilities, switch to the other characters. Like, they just feel really good. I like the style change. I know that's another thing that's been a pretty big divide in the Final Fantasy community, I would say. I think some of it has been like imposters, people coming in to just kind of speak for people, but I do believe genuinely that there are people in the Final Fantasy community that are kind of torn on, do you want turn-based or do you want more of like the action, like hack and slash? I mean, I don't know if I'd really call it that. Same thing with Final Fantasy 16, right? That's really where the divide and all the arguments online happen. This game is very different than Final Fantasy 16 in terms of the feel, but it's closer to that maybe than turn-based, but I really like it. The ability to change on the fly, the ability to use abilities and to use spells, and you really want to get a pretty good build going on all of these characters, and you maybe want to have these characters specialize at certain things, and that I don't think I took seriously enough the first time I played it. I made it through the game, but see, I don't remember what I played it on. I played it on normal for this, and it's a challenge. It's definitely a challenge, and it's something that you have to not necessarily grind, but I did a lot. I did a lot of the side missions. I tried to do as much as possible, and I tried to get my characters, ready for certain battles. Easy is that I did actually try it on easy this time around just to kind of see. Easy is easy. You do a lot of damage. You don't take a lot of damage. The one thing I'd maybe say, to correct my past statements, one other negative, the AI, your other characters, sometimes they just do the darnest things. They are generally smart. They're smart in the way that they will keep themselves alive. I can appreciate that because specifically even like someone like Aerith, right? You want her alive as much as possible because she's the healer. I think personally, I had Barrett maybe be the one originally to have the raise spell. So if you get knocked down, he could bring you back. I just did that because, he's more of the tank. He's probably going to have life and be one of the last people standing, so he can bring others back. So I tried to plan it out. But again, one thing I noticed is, yes, they will do their best, and they do a really good job at keeping themselves alive. The one thing they don't do a great job of is just, I guess, producing all that well. If you rely on them, if you need them in a pinch to deal like a really good amount of damage, sometimes if the enemy is being pressured or if the enemy is staggered, yes, they know, the AI knows to kind of go all in. And you control them. You can tell them to use abilities, and boy, would I. I would just, mash over, like, hey, Barrett, do this thing. Hey, Tifa, do this thing. I think that's how you're supposed to play. But, like, during second-to-second combat, you can be wailing away at an enemy, and then there could be like 2 other enemies, and then you got like Tifa in the background, and Tifa's just not doing anything. Like she's keeping herself around for sure, and that's good, I suppose, but she's not building up her meter to use the abilities or spells or anything or items. She's not building that up. She's just blocking. They block a lot. So, I laugh at it because I do actually think it was funny. And I remember, I just beat it like maybe 5-6 days ago at this point. I mean, I can think of several instances where it's like I'm doing as Cloud, because I prefer Cloud to play as him. I'm doing so much, and I'm controlling them to do their abilities, but they are just not giving me the effort that's really required. So, that I guess would maybe be a weakness. The AI, I think, needs to be a little bit smarter, and hopefully they are in Rebirth. They keep themselves alive, which is great, but they don't second to second, minute to minute. They're not dealing the damage I would have liked them to do. But beyond that, the combat's a blast. All the characters are a blast. Like, I said, I like Cloud a lot, but they're all super good. Like, Tifa is the one that I can't really, get behind. Her abilities are awesome. I think her play style, how you're supposed to play as her, I just don't jive with. Barrett obviously being, the tank kind of thing. I really like playing as him, and, I normally do far away. You do, the ranged guns. Aerith has always been, I think, really, really fun. I remember liking how she played back when I first played this, 4 years ago. They're just really fun. Like, and it's always looking cool too, right? And another thing, I guess, to leave gameplay, aside, the boss fights. This is something I very much didn't consider or like put a lot into when I played this 4 years ago. It's classic. Like when I think about Kingdom Hearts, you think, okay, there's a lot of boss fights and a lot of them are very good. Yeah, there's boss fights all the time in these games, or I mean, this game specifically, these games in general, but they'll normally end chapters. They may end the middle point of a chapter, and the boss fights are cool. They're cool to look at. They all operate differently. You're going to have to kind of apply a different strategy to each of them. Again, like the strategy, the thinking about the gameplay, not really something I put a lot of stock into a while ago. But this time, I'm trying to look at it a different light, trying to not nitpick, but, just look at different things. That was something that stood out, where it's like, yeah, to get the most out of these games, you have to kind of be specific in how you're playing, how, you're building out these characters, and you kind of just notice those things. So I think that really stood out with this game. And then really, well, there's only two other things to talk about, and that's the story, that's the characters. So characters, well, like I said, I mentioned, the voice acting, it's a lovable cast. Like, it's something that a lot of these, like, I guess Final Fantasy, even Kingdom Hearts, a lot of these games just, some of their special sauce is immediately liking characters, and I don't know if it could be a Japanese thing, to be flat, because I think about Yakuza having, played 9 of those games in the past year. You just immediately fall in love, like with a character like Kiryu or Ichiban, who gets like one game and you already like him. They have like a way of doing it. And Final Fantasy games, I think historically has had some really good characters. I don't know. I don't know if it's like a default thing we have in our heads where we go in thinking, okay, well, we got to like these characters, so we're going to. But Cloud is a really interesting character, and there's obviously a lot to his story that we'll get into, but you have him. You have these very, like Barrett is very, scary, and, him and Cloud kind of clash, especially in the beginning, but he's an awesome character. Tifa, like, they're just lovable. You learn to immediately. Aerith, Jessie. Now, Jessie's actually somebody who I remember really liking, because, again, like, I didn't know this stuff. I know what happens to Aerith, but going into playing it for the first time, I didn't know who Jessie was, Wedge, Biggs, these characters. I had seen, Barrett and Tifa and stuff, but I didn't really know. They're all immediately fun. They got a really strong personality. Like, all of them have strong personalities. It's just what kind of strong personality do they have? But they all stand out. It is such a good cast. And I remember the first time, and I remember this time, when you lose Jessie, which I will say, I watched interviews going into Rebirth, and the question was asked of if Jessie makes it out of the tower, and he says like he would think so, or he would hope that she does. So I have a feeling that she also doesn't die. Biggs and Wedge don't die. We'll get into that because of all the changes that they made, but I really felt bad, when Biggs goes and Jessie goes. But Jessie, I think, was a better character, and I think I liked her relationship with Cloud more. So when she goes, it was like, oh, that hurts a lot. So I don't know. I don't know if it would diminish it if she comes back, in Rebirth, but, we'll see. But across the board, again, Aerith, the second you see her, you'll like her. Just the relationships they also have with each other and how they evolve, over time. And then the story of this game. Okay, well, there's actually quite a bit to talk about, right? So you have the base story of Final Fantasy VII, and having watched it now, so I'm all caught up, and that was, again, like a purposeful thing. In order to get all in and to be ready for Rebirth, originally I wasn't going to do it. Originally, I wanted to kind of experience Remake as Remake, and then once all 3 were done, then I would go and I would beat and play and experience and watch the lore and stuff for the first time. So I broke my vow, but I think this is maybe the better way because I wanted to see what changed. I think obviously one of the big things with the story with Remake is what changes in it. The whispers and the idea of like, hey, you have to stay on this path. If you deviate, that's going to be a really big problem. Sephiroth doing a lot of things that he didn't originally do, and coming into Cloud's life basically in a different way or faster than he did in the original. So, again, these were things that I had like seen online and whatnot, but it's hard to get fully into it if you don't know the original, if you don't know what is deviating and what is changing. So after beating Remake the second time, I went back and I watched and I read up on all this lore and all this stuff. And may I just say, Final Fantasy VII to the original, to tell the story that it did, that is having to be broken up 3 different times now, and also Crisis Core, is actually nuts. You know, the fact that part of Final Fantasy VII, you can make it just a prequel game in Crisis Core all on its own, is insane. And I think that's more power to the original. But I love it. I love the story. I love everything that happens, you know, in the original. So in this, I like what they did. And that might be the most controversial statement, you know, in this video. That's another divide. I think what I saw online was a lot of divide of basically the gimmick that is the Whispers and the changing of fate and changing of timelines. Some people likened it to, like, the Whispers are almost like the old-time writers and creatives of Final Fantasy VII. And I'm saying, like, this is like a theory, but it's like interesting. And they're trying to, like, prevent the new age writers from, like, messing it up. How I look at it, and I'm really giving them the benefit of the doubt, I'm just giving it to them. I think they're trying to do something extremely ambitious, and I respect the heck out of it. And the reason why I think it is that more than any other kind of gimmick is because of their history with Kingdom Hearts or history with Final Fantasy, etc. I think that's just kind of the way they roll. Maybe I'm too blind to, like, Tetsuya Nomura, but when they kind of pitched the idea that this is a remake in the sense that you're remaking the original, but also, like, Sephiroth is trying to remake the timeline. He you know, it's not a future-like thing, but he knows what's going to happen. So, you know, kind of a multiversal thing. So he knows mistakes that he's going to make. He knows things that are going to happen, and he's trying to course correct, hence why he appears faster, and he's trying to do things pretty differently than he did originally. Even so much as hinting multiple times that he's not really interested in going after Aerith. So we'll have to see, you know, how that one plays out. But to me, I love that stuff. Now, maybe it's because it makes it more convoluted, and maybe that's why it makes more people upset. The base of Final Fantasy VII is not the most complicated thing. Like, it's definitely really deep, especially for, like, 1997. Like, they are going all in. But nowadays, like, if you really, you know, spend a couple hours and you look, it is not the most complicated or nuts thing in the world compared to, like, an Alan Wake or Kingdom Hearts, or I'm sure many other, you know, games, right? And these are the games that stand out to me. But the remake is you should have this knowledge of 7, and I think that'll enhance it. They know what's going to happen, or they've already told this story. It's not just a remake in terms of better visuals and better quality, but also, like, in the game, it's a remake. They are remaking the timeline. That's the entire idea. You know, that to me is awesome. So I get it. I mean, some people think of the Whispers, you know, as gimmicks, or like, why in God's name would you do it this way? Or, you know, they're trying to appease both sides. Like, why just do it one way, not both? I actually really like the idea that they are doing it literally both ways. They are staying generally to the core of the, there's plenty of things that are pretty darn close to the original, but different things are going to happen. Maybe characters that die are not going to die, or just things outright that didn't happen now, or vice versa. Even the ending of this game, like, shows them their future. I believe the quote is, like, if they fail, right? If they can't beat Sephiroth in that moment, the future, the meteor, and, you know, you get a little glimpse of Aerith in the water and all of that stuff. So there's a lot of nostalgia. There's a lot of callbacks, and they are, I think, staying faithful, but they are, like, I feel like they believe, well, why would we just do it again? You know, yes, you can make it look pretty, and you can make it look like it was made now, and you could just do the original, but I do not think that's how they roll. I think they roll that that's something that interests them, but they've already done a masterpiece, or, you know, the people that made it back then, they made a masterpiece. They made one of the most iconic games ever of all time. So if you're going to do it again, why not kind of mess with it a little bit? Why not really take it and use some of the principles of the lore, like with the live stream and stuff? Well, you can tell a multiverse kind of, like, where paths change and stuff. You can do that in the lore of Final Fantasy VII. You kind of have to do it again and, you know, deviate a little bit. So I really respect it, and I really liked it, especially, like, playing it without knowing. Final Fantasy VII, except for that one twist. The first time, and even this time when I did it, I didn't watch it yet. I really like just the base story. You can tell that it's part of a bigger thing that they are shortening down. So there are moments where it's like, this is like a 25, 30-hour game, and really they could have made it so much less. If they wanted to, and it would have been very difficult, but if they wanted to tell the entirety of, and make 3 parts into one, it would have been really tough. But they probably could have, because this game condensed could have been around 7 to 10 hours. It really could have. And I don't know if that would have made it better. I feel like probably not. And especially, again, the way that they're doing it with the deviations and with all these callbacks, I don't think it would work nearly as well. But they could have, and they could have done a game that's 40, 50 hours. That's all of it, instead of this, which is one game that's, 30, 40, 50 hours. Rebirth might be like 100 plus hours to do everything. And then I think it's going to be called Reunion, because they just say that word, and I mean that it's a central theme. I feel like it's going to be Reunion for the third game. Did they have to do it this way? No, no, they absolutely didn't. They didn't have to do it at all, to be real. One other thing I want to say, I do remember, and again, this is me playing Final Fantasy characters or knowing who they are through just Kingdom Hearts, not really into it at all. When they first announced this thing, which I think was it 2016, maybe 2015, or whenever they announced this at that E3 of PlayStation, I mean, I remember the crowd, because it was live, going crazy. I remember the internet going crazy. I was into IGN at the time. I remember like reading all these articles and just kind of being so far removed and seeing the internet kind of come together for like, oh my God, like this is a legendary game as part of a legendary franchise, and they're remaking, PlayStation PS4 exclusive, or if that's what it said. I remember that. I remember that trailer, and I remember thinking, oh, cool, like, maybe I'll try it out, but I was not really all that into it. And going even into when this game released, I gave it a try, but I wasn't really all that invested, and I still really liked it. It was one of the better games of 2020, and playing it now, I just feel like I respect it more. I appreciate it more. It's definitely not a perfect game. Again, like the length kind of thing, you can kind of feel it. The side missions definitely are not good, and you could really cut a lot of those side missions. The AI needs a little work. Those are maybe the 3 negatives. But overall, this is one of, if not, like when you think of remakes, you think of maybe Shadow of the Colossus, maybe Resident Evil 2. I think the Dead Space remake of last year was so good, and that changed things up, right? Isaac can talk now, all that stuff. This one, like, to say it's the best remake is almost like, it's actually kind of odd to say, because is it a remake of the game? Well, it's only 1/3 of it, and then it's not even that literal game. That they changed a lot on it. So is it a remake? Can you compare it directly to like a Resident Evil 2 remake? I think there's more faithful remakes than this, but I think in terms of what they're trying to do here with kind of a dual meaning of remake, this is one of a kind. Which is ironic because the original Final Fantasy is literally one of a kind. So they kind of did it twice. So I really love it. I was excited to talk about it. Hopefully you guys, like the video. Like I said, we're going to do the Yuffie DLC next, and Rebirth, I'm covering that on the main channel. So there's plenty of coverage there. But obviously we stick to past titles. Eventually, maybe 3, 4, 5 years from now, we will replay maybe this again, and we will replay Rebirth, and then that can be a video on this channel if YouTube's still around. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Make sure, as always, again, you guys are subscribed, bell icon turned on, and I hope to see you all on the next one.